Welcome back, folks. Thanks for joining us for another video. I'm Lloyd Purvis and this is Run4Adventure. So you join me in the adventure bus and I'm just heading out for my Wednesday run. I thought I'd grab the cameras and bring you guys along with me. The main reason being is that I'm going to be running in these bad boys again. So inov-8's new Mudtalon Speed. I took them out for their first impressions run the other day. I was really impressed with how the shoe ran, but I was coming back from illness, so it was just a nice steady 7 miles across the Hale Towers. So underfoot conditions were pretty dry, so I thought with the shoe being called the Mudtalon Speed, it needs a more thorough testing. So on today's run, we are definitely going to be getting some very wet, very muddy underfoot conditions. So let's go over to the starting location, let's get the shoes on our feet and let's get running. Okay, so as we make our way up the first climb, we're only half a mile into the run and we've had way more wet stuff than we had on the entire run last time. So the route I've got planned today, we started down there in Karud Bay just outside St Ives. We're heading across the inland trails up to the steeple here, really beautiful viewing point with some amazing views when you've got nice weather, of course. We're a little bit grey and miserable today, and then we're going to be cutting across down to the coast path towards Zena and then coming back all the way along the coast path, a notoriously challenging section of coast path. And this is a route I run a lot. We call it the Zena loop, but this is a slightly different version of it, but it is definitely going to be a thorough testing for the Mudtalon Speed. Lots of slippy wet rocks, lots of mud, and we got some good sections of tarmac as well, so going to be a real good challenge for the shoe, and it's going to test out that luggy outsole to the max. Should be about 10-11 miles by the end of it, so let's get out this hill, let's get running. Happy days. Okay, so we have made it to the head of the trail, and you can see as I entered the trail, this is where the fun and games begin, because it's going to get very wet, very boggy and very muddy from now on. But we've just done about 2.5 miles on the hard stuff, and I'm amazed how well this shoe runs on the road. I think it's the combination of that Powerflow Pro cushioning and the brilliant boomerang footbeds. It just makes it very comfortable, and it's soaked up that tarmac no problem. It is very comfortable for an aggressive stripped back trail shoe. Now it's a typical winter's day, so we've got low cloud cover, it's grey, miserly, so it's not ideal conditions for filming. So I do apologise if there's water on the lens and it's spoiling the footage, but you know, we can only do what we can do. Now the eagle-eyed viewers will probably notice that I'm running in a different kind of vest today as well. So I've got the new Apex Pro from Camelback on. Got it the other day. I've run in it a couple of times. Late last year I tested out their Zephyr Pro. I thought it was a good vest, but I did think it had a few problems because it was a one size fits all, which I'm never a big fan of because I find it hard to get the right fit in vests like that, and I think you lose a lot of accessible storage because of it. So the Apex Pro is a sized vest, so I've got a medium on now, and that means it's got a lot more accessible storage. It's got 12 litres of volume, and it's got some really cool features like the built-in pole quiver, which I love. So we're going to be testing it out over the next couple of weeks, and then we'll obviously be bringing a full review to the channel for you guys at home. But This is the biggest hill of the run, Rosewall Hill, and like I say, this is where it gets challenging. I would show you the views up top, but coming down the road there, you couldn't even see the top of the hill with all the mist, so there's not going to be many views on this run. But let's get up over the hill and then let's get to the coast path. As I headed off up Rosewall Hill, a climb that I've run hundreds of times, I was actually surprised how wet it was underfoot, and I was expecting wet, muddy conditions, but this was about as wet as I've ever seen it. So lots of deep puddles to run through and slippery tree roots to avoid. The climb is only around 400 feet of elevation gain, but it's pretty steep going in places, so it really does get the legs pumping and the lungs working hard. Those 8mm lugs on the outsole of the Mudtalon really came into their own. They work brilliantly in this type of environment. So great levels of traction in the deep mud, and the deep lugs really dug in and helped me drive up some of the steeper sections of the hill. Like I said, no views up here today, that's for sure. I can't see anything. And it's super blowy and pretty chilly. So let's get up the top of this hill and get down and seek shelter. So the first summit of the run was done, and now I was heading out on the inland trails across some very waterlogged fields, and this was going to be a great test for the upper on the Mudtalon Speed to see how well it gets rid of water, because the last thing we want is a squelchy pair of trail running shoes. This section was actually pretty tough going because there was a real strong headwind the whole way across. However, I was soon heading down the other side of the hill, and this offered me a little bit of protection from the wind, plus I was running downhill now, so things started to ease up. But this descent can be super tricky in wet conditions because you've got a big mix of underfoot terrain. So wet grass, we still had a lot of standing water, but you've also got lots of slippery wet rocks to deal with. So you definitely have to have your wits about you and stay fully focused. Once I got down the bottom of the climb, it was time to take on board some much needed energy. So I grabbed out one of Precision Fuel and Hydration's Tasty Chews, and that should give me enough to get me through the second half of the run. As I hit the trails across the fields that were going to take me to the coast path, I could tell this next section was going to be very interesting because it was starting to get super muddy underfoot. Okay, so we have made it to the coast path. We're 6.6 miles into the run. You can see there that that bridleway to get to the coast path was so muddy and boggy and slippery. And Mudtalon Speed by name, Mudtalon Speed by nature, it did a really good job, gave me great levels of traction. Didn't slip once, in fact. As far as the upper goes, I find it very comfortable. I love the fact that inov-8 used this super lightweight sort of stripped back fabric. Makes it a lot lighter than the Talon 260. Just feels a lot more nimble, a lot more responsive than that shoe. There's been a couple of times on the run where I've been running through shin deep water, and because that mesh on the upper is so lightweight, it doesn't hold on to any water, so it just gets rid of it. So I've had no squelchy feet either, which is always a bonus when you're running here in the UK at winter time. So now we've reached the coast path, we're going to have a bit more wet rock to deal with. So this is the section between Zena and St Ives, so notoriously tough underfoot, and like I said, lots of wet rock, and that has sometimes been an issue when it comes to inov-8 trail shoes, especially the luggy ones, but apparently they've used a stickier compound this time. And so far it's been really good. I haven't had any issues at all, but let's see how we get on this section. finally have made it back to the adventure bus. What, 11.25 miles. That was a challenging run for my body and for the shoe. Conditions were pretty bad out there, and the Arc runners a couple of weekends ago definitely got lucky, because super muddy, super wet, completely polar opposite end of the spectrum to what they had on race day. But let's get some warm clothes in, jump in the van, and let's wrap this video up. Oh, that is better. It's always nice after a wet, miserable run like that when you get nice, dry, warm clothes on. But that was definitely a proper test for inov-8's Mudtalon Speed. Super tricky conditions underfoot, and I would say it passed the test with flying colours. So that 8mm lugged outsole gave me great levels of traction in all those boggy, muddy conditions, and they were definitely very muddy indeed. And on the rocks, the rubber felt pretty sticky. I would say it's not as sticky as, say, Vibram Mega Grip rubber, but I think definitely an improvement on some of the previous inov-8 rubbers that they've used on their outsoles. The only time I did have an issue was a couple of times I went over some wooden styles and they were super greasy. But to be fair, there's not many trail shoes out there that are going to grip you on greasy, wet wood. I think the combination of the Powerflow Pro foam and the brilliant Boomerang footbeds is a really good system, especially for a sort of stripped back minimal trail shoe. So I felt fine on the section of the tarmac, no problem. All I will say is towards the end of the run, in some of those rockier sections, I did start to feel some impact through that midsole. Now, there is a very thin rock plate in the shoe that offers a little bit of protection, but again, like I said, towards the end of the run I did start to feel some impact. So I would say we did 11.2 miles today. I would probably be happy running the shoe up to sort of marathon distance, but I'm not sure I'd want to run it much further, just because it is quite minimal when it comes to that midsole setup. I had a few viewers comment after the first impressions video that they had a pair of the Mudtalon Speeds and they took it out for a muddy run, and the outsole got all bunged up with mud and they lost a lot of traction. But I can honestly say that didn't happen on today's run. Now, it could come down to the type of mud you're running on, the type of underfoot conditions, but the outsoles seem to clear the mud really quickly today, and you can see in the footage I had some very muddy conditions to run in. The only other thing is when it comes to the upper, and I love the upper, I love the fact it's so light, so airy, and it drains water so quickly, but there's not a lot of protection on it. You've got a good toe bumper, but the actual upper itself, so a couple of times I was running in those rocky areas where you've got to be quick on your feet. I didn't quite get my foot placement right, and I'd caught a rock on the sort of instep or on the inside of the forefoot, and I did take quite a lot of impact. So because that upper is so minimal, which is great, it just doesn't offer the foot a lot of protection in rocky conditions. But all in all, I think it was a really good test for the shoe on today's run, and I think the Mudtalon Speed performed really well. We're going to be getting some more miles in it over the next couple of weeks because it's perfect for sort of winter running here in the UK, and then we'll try and bring you guys a sort of full in-depth review. Also, the Apex Pro hydration vest performed really well on today's run, so the longest run so far. I love the fact it's sized, it definitely fitted me better than the Zephyr Pro, and a lot more accessible storage. Like I said, I'm going to be running in that over the next couple of weeks, and then we'll bring you guys a full in-depth review. Really hope you enjoyed coming along on today's run. I know it was a bit miserable out there. I hope the footage was okay. If you did enjoy the video, if you found it helpful, don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe. We'll be back on the channel very, very soon, and as always, stay safe and keep on running. Okay, so we have made it to the head of the trail, and you can see on the footage as I entered the trail there, this is where the fun begins. This is where it gets super... Oh, the wind!